It is usually what we bear in mind most often. But sometimes it means the simple, the small, the sick, the humble. In Psalm 33, we have a poor man cried, and the Lord heard him and saved him out of all his troubles. It doesn't mean a wretched there, but someone in need. And the point here to understand, yes, the point here is to understand that poverty is not misery. Poverty is to be dependent, to depend on somebody else. And we are dependent. We are in a state of dependency. That's why the first poverty is our poverty towards God. In Psalm 51, verse 17, you read, "Sacrifice to God is a broken spirit, a broken and contrite heart, O God, you will not despise." Psalm 51, 17. The Lord loves those who are realistic, those who will admit that they depend on Him. But men will also depend on one another. They are the poor of each other. So it's important to keep in mind, in the Bible, poverty is vulnerability. I cannot fulfill myself alone, all by myself, but I have to expect something from somebody else. Second point, how does the poor and how does the preferential option for the poor fit into our work of sanctification, of humanization? It sounds obvious in a Christian culture, but even in a non-Christian background, by the way, to say, well, of course, we must take care of the poor because we're good. But how does caring for the poor, including being good, participate in the work of creation and participate in the work of sanctification, my sanctification and the sanctification of others? This second point is about understanding that the poor is a way towards godlikeness. Godlikeness. The poor is the path to become godlike. You all know that we've been created in the image and likeness of God. To the image and likeness of God. This is the point. How does the preferential option for the poor take us more towards godlikeness? How does it allow us to grow in a more beautiful image of God? Here it is helpful to think of a high mountain, no? A high mountain with the Lord being at the top and me being at the foot of the mountain. And the distance between the Lord and me, me who is so small, is huge, you know? There's a mountain that separates us because I depend on Him for my life. He really gave me life, but He can take it back at any moment if He wants. My heart is beating because He makes it beat, but you know, I depend on Him. I depend on Him for my life. And He helps me also in my life. And in the same way, I can also have the same relationship with one of my neighbor, a neighbor that will depend on me. That's what the relationship with the poor is, first and foremost. It is well deeper than caring for people who will be in need or whatever. When I decide to look with mercy at someone who is poor, I do nothing more but imitate the mercy of God who looks at me. And we are invited to this. We are invited to this. The preferential option for the poor is the same approach God has with us. Why does God take care of me? why is he interested in me? In the same way, the poor will wonder, why does this man or this woman take care of me? Why is she interested on me? And there's the same distance, although of course it is huge between God and me, and it is human between me and somebody who can depend on me. And that's what we are called to live. And it is beautiful. And yes, it is beautiful, but there's more to it. And it is my third point. The poor is a way to meet with God. Remember my image, the mountain, God at the top, and me so small at the foot, and somebody a little bit smaller than me. I'm helping him, I'm merciful to him, I'm taking care of him. The relationship I have with him would be an imitation of the relationship God has towards me, and I would live this to the full. My heart opens up to mercy in the image of God's mercy. But if we stop there, we could say, well, the Lord sits up high, apart from the world, and he says, be good, because it is right. Do good deeds. And the Lord doesn't do that. The Lord doesn't do that. At a given time, the Lord comes into our world and he takes the place of the poorest of the poor. He is insulted in front of his disciples, of his mother. He is recognized as a blasphemer. He, who is the Son of God, is detained and is crucified. Even his dead body is pierced by the sword of the soldier. Even his dead body is not respected. I don't think one can be any poorer than that. He is a prisoner, he thirsts on the cross, he's the poorest. At a certain time in history, God took the place of all the poor, of the poorest of the poor. So we are not only invited to love and to care for the poor as God does for us, we are also invited to love the Lord in a way we couldn't reach if there was only the mountain. Remember my mountain, the Lord at the top and me at the foot, and he's very, very high. And I say, well, I love you, Lord. You are on the top of the mountain. It's very difficult for us, you know. It is easier, at least it is possible, if the one I have to love is on the cross saying, well, you know, I died for you. I died for you. One day, a man died for me, not for the mass, not for mankind, you know. I died for you. And this poor who is on the cross will invite us to see God in every poor, in each poor. Sometimes we have a vague view of this. We will say in each beggar there's Jesus, in each prisoner there's Jesus. But because one day for real, Jesus came as a prisoner, as a crucified. One day he came as dead in a real tomb. And this is our God. This is a God that I can meet. And that mercy that I can have for the most vulnerable, and it is God himself who is the most vulnerable. Only God is able to do this, to take the place of the lowest of men, so as to enable the second lowest of men, who I am, to love him. And it is in this sense that the preferential option for the poor is not this good conscience, nice and Catholic, if I may say, that we could have on our good deeds, saying, look, I am good for the ones in need. Because we've been created in the image and likeness of God, he will enable us to live this image and likeness in the love that we will have for the crucified, and through him for all the poor. And as a result, the love for each poor becomes a love for the crucified. So what is the preferential option for the poor? We've seen that the preferential option for the poor goes beyond charity work. Now, concretely in my life, I mean, for me, what is the preferential option for the poor? First of all, it is a preferential option. So it is an option. So it is my responsibility. I may not choose the poor. I may not choose that poor. I am free. It is an option. And it is a preferential option. If there are actions to be taken, if I have to choose, I am invited to prefer the one who depends on me. I am invited to prefer. As it is an option, it may not come true. That's right, because of human freedom. And that's the same for our goods, our properties. I can do good with what I have. I can also do things that just don't matter. It is the same here. Am I going to love this one who is crucified? Am I going to love this beggar? This one who is homeless? This one who is sick? Am I going to love him? I may choose not to love him. Preferential option. If I have to choose between various actions, between different people, am I going to prefer this one who depends on me, who is in need? And you can see that this preferential option brings us back to our dignity of man and woman. We are called to happiness. It means we are called to make the right choices for the common good. So we are called to choose to prefer the poor. We are responsible. And one day, as we'll be judged on the use of our resources, our goods, we'll also be judged on this. Have we seen God where he was? Have we loved when we could? Because we think of social obligation, before we think of social obligation or charity duty, let's see where our responsibility is. It makes us grow too. In one sentence, tell me what kind of poor you visit and what kind of poverty you fight, and I will tell you who you are or who you want to be. We fulfill ourselves in this way. You'll see that there is an exercise in Zacchaeus' course after this teaching, and there's an exercise when we are asking how many poor do you know by their first name? To know a poor by his first name, to know him hurt to hurt, as a man or woman who wants to fulfill himself, as a man or woman who want to meet with the Lord and to be in his image and likeness. I really need to wonder how many poor do I really know? Because I have there an opportunity to grow and to make him grow. Another question is, who are the poor? With the Bible, the poor is the one who is dependent. Practical application, the poor is the sick person, the poor is the elderly person, the poor is the wretched, I mean the one with little money. It can be a colleague, you know, a teammate in trouble, having a breakdown or something. The poor is not only the beggar, homeless, who is homeless around the corner. Mother Teresa has wonderful words. She's told, she told once, she was wondering about, you know, in West countries as mine, poverty, how can we do in Western countries to combat poverty, to care for the poor? And she says, you know, in Western countries is that lots of older people live in nursing homes and nobody will come and visit. Never. Have you ever think about this, to end your life and to stay for months without anyone visiting you? Mother Teresa says, the poor is there. He is in our families. He is the older person we don't have time to visit. Before living and going around the world, let's start by asking who are the poor around me. And they are always dependent in some way. Here, the older person who depends on me, who is waiting for my visit. It's easy to visit someone in one sense, and yet it is complicated. It is hard to go and do it. Who are the poor for me? Those who are physically unable to grow, who are they? There's also another question, and it is good to ask it in this teaching. It is, well, the Lord gave me goods, gave me possessions. Why didn't he give those goods to the poor? Why did he give those goods to me? Don't you think it is unfair? First thing that we can say here is that one day we will all be poor, all of us. One day we will all be in situations of extreme poverty, and no one will escape this. Let us not think that they are poor forever and rich, or at least non-poor forever. We will one day depend on other people. We will have to depend on other people one day. Second thing, possessions have been entrusted to me. One of them is to take care of these poor. It is not a question of why this one and not this one. It is a question of one's responsibility regarding one another, including the one who is poor. Do not forget the common good. The common good consists in creating physical environment so that the group and each of its members can grow. So when I am entrusted with goods, I am entrusted with more than goods. I'm also entrusted with the use I can make of these goods for the one who depends on me. So the question is not how come he doesn't have and how come I have, but how come I don't use what I have so that he can have more. You understand? This is the right question that we should ask. Since God has entrusted me with that responsibility, how do I use it? You all know, I think, this terrible sentence of Jesus in the Gospel. It is in the Gospel according to John chapter 12, verse 8. You have the poor with you always. You will not always have me. You have the poor with you always. Because the poor is the one who is dependent. There will always be poor people. You can always firmly fight poverty. You won't stop this person because she's had such accidents maybe in her life. You won't stop him or her from turning to alcohol or ending up on the streets. This is pretty much the consequence of human freedom. There will always be poor people. The dream of a world without poor people is finally the dream of a world without men. A dream of a world without the possibility to fall, a dream of a world without the one who came and saved us there in our wretchedness. So who are the poor? Let's have a look around us. There are more than you think, and they are much more different than you think. Something else. The poor are one thing, if I may say. Poverty is something else. It is not the preferential option for poverty. We confuse very often. The church doesn't ask us to prefer poverty or to love misery or to love to be sick, for example. As a path to happiness, the church asks us to love the poor, the sick, this man who is sick, James, for example, Peter, who is sick, this man who is homeless. And the church has also asked us to firmly fight against poverty. There is no preferential option for poverty. God hates poverty. God loves the poor who is dependent. This poor, he loves him, he loves me with my name, but he hates poverty, and especially material poverty. Material poverty was not intended by God. It is the consequence of a poor distribution between men who don't make a right disposition of the Lord's goods. We must take our responsibility here. Material poverty and misery are a scandal. We must firmly fight against it, and God knows that the church is in the front to fight against misery. As Christians, we hate poverty, but we love every poor. When we get to distinguish, we start to understand the mercy of God, who says, "You know that I hate sin, but I love you as you are, and I shall give you my pardon, because I love you. And yet I hate your sin." In the same way, we don't like poverty, but this poor man, we have to love him. And this is true of material poverty, but it is also true of the poverty of the one who is unable to speak, who is voiceless. For example, the oppressed, the prisoner, of course, but also the unborn child still in the womb. Who speaks for him? Who does? The Pope, at least. The Pope, who says we must respect life from its conception until its natural death. Remember, for example, Pope John Paul II, at the end of his life, some people were asking if he should stay or not. He was so old and so ill, so sick at the end. Wasn't that too much to? And it's just wondering if the connection is, yes, it's nice. It's all right.
It was breaking a little bit just now, a few 1 or 2 minutes, 1 minute, I think.
Okay. I was talking about the Pope John Paul II. You know, at the end of his life, he was so old and so bad at the end, and some people were saying, "Is it good that he stays there?" They were asking if it was not a bit too poor, but he was acting as a witness for poverty we are all called to live. And also he was saying, with what little strength I have left, I am going to speak for all those who are even weaker than me. This is how one can fight against poverty and love every poor. And it is a real fight against that misery which leads to destroying life for the love of the mom and for the love of the child. So fight against poverty and love every poor. Here is our mission. Our mission for our daily life, to act so as to reduce poverty, and very personally to love this one, not the poor in general, but this one. Now let's talk a little bit about humility, if you like. As with each of the lessons, there is what they call in the Zacchaeus course a complementary principle, and in this case it is humility. We've seen that when we love a poor, this poor here, we're doing nothing. And we've also seen that when I love this poor here, I also love God who gave himself to me as poor. Which doesn't to do more and more, but to act deeply. It must be kept in mind that if I don't see myself as a poor, how am I going to understand poverty? The first point here is to recognize oneself as a poor. We are poor. Remember the word Benny just received at the beginning of our meeting during the praise. It was in Matthew chapter 7, from what I remember. Yes, ask and it will be given to you. You know, we need to ask. We need to ask God to give the things we need. Knock and the door will be open to you. Search and you will find. Everyone who asks receives. Everyone who searches finds. Everyone who knocks will have the door opened. It was beautiful, this word for today. I thought so. Yes, we are poor. We are poor, and we depend on God. Um, I am poor in front of God Himself, for sure. I'm a creature. I've been created. I will die. Actually, isn't that surprising? Just to be alive, just to be alive today. You know, there will be thousands of reasons not to be alive. It's incredible to be alive today, basically. And it is amazing to feel alive when every reason in the world should lead me to suffer from an accident or to be on the floor. And with that awareness, I also see how limited I am, basically. I might not be, but I am. I am, but I might not be. And here we find our mountain again, remember? And the Lord at the top, and a poor man cried, and the Lord heard him and saved him out of all his troubles. I am true to myself when I say my life depends on such. And that's a real humbling experience. Humility is to be realistic. In our society, it is difficult to accept. Oh, I think it is cut again. The connection. Is it still all right?
It's okay now,
Yes.
but could you just repeat a little bit before this? I think we heard you clearly until you spoke about the mountain. The Lord heard the poor man.
Okay. So you didn't follow when before the mountain or after?
We heard you until the mountain.
All right. Okay. Yes. Okay. Yes. So I was saying to remember about the mountain. I was quoting again the sentence of the psalm: "A poor man called him and saved him out of all his troubles." So I'm true to myself when I say, Isabelle, your time is limited, and that's wonderful. My life depends on you. I recognize me as such, and that's a real humbling experience. Humility is to be realistic. In our society, it is difficult to accept. In fact, we all try to avoid representations of the death. When it is a matter of disease, for example, we build hospitals where we can see so well what's going on. We can see so well where the elderly or the disabled are. It has to disappear. Why? Because we are afraid to see ourselves as poor, because of pride and lack of humility, of course. Once again, humility is realism. I am limited. Second point, and it goes further, to be humble is to accept to be the poor of someone, of somebody else. One day, in a hospital bed, one day I will be sick, unless of course there's an accident, but there's a good chance that I'm going to be ill. This poor that I can see one day, it could be me. It can be scary, I know. It is still realism to know that one day I will be in the position of any poor. And sometimes we are scared about a special type of poverty, you know, because we don't want to admit it, because we don't want to accept that one day it could be me. If we take, for example, disability, I could turn out, for example, like this man or woman if I have an accident. And that's going to bring me to fear disability and to fear maybe also disabled people. It's an example. And I will need to realize it, to recognize that fear inside me, to be able to see disabled people with different eyes, and to see also myself with different eyes, to accept my limits with humility. What is stopping me to love such a poor? Because basically, I don't want to admit that I could turn out like him. And I think that's the great, I think that the great saints have ended up reconciling with themselves, saying one day, yes, I could be this poor, I could be this leper. Remember Saint Francis of Assisi, Saint Francois d'Assise, Saint Francis of Assisi, when he kisses the leper, he kisses this leper, he embraces this leper here, this one, because he feels he is reluctant. He doesn't want to do it at the beginning. But basically, he admits himself with all his limits as a man. He accepts that it could be him. And here he stands up for himself, you know, he flourishes. It's not that he crashes. It's not that he doesn't exist anymore. Instead, he lives life for the full. And that's, we are invited to do the same in our lives, because obviously that's the way we are, small, simple, and humble. So to be humble is to recognize oneself as a poor. It is to accept to be the poor of someone else one day. And to be humble is also to admit that our responsibility towards the poor is also limited to our capabilities. It's also a form of humility. Sometimes we would like to go and we say, oh Lord, you gave me abilities, you gave me strength, energy. I'm going to care for the poor. And it isn't fair. We have to start asking, who can I take care of? What do I fear? Where can it hurt? And first, do I start by praying? Lord, you give me this person, this meeting. Am I able to do it? Anyway, I don't want to do it without you. I can see I live mercy, that you invite me to live the mercy you have for me. I start by praying so as to live it to the full. Second point, do I get support from other people when I care for poor? It's important. I'm not Jesus. Sometimes we would like to save the world, but we got to do what we can. Someone has saved before. Someone has saved us. So prayer first and fraternal support. When I commit myself in complicated situations with people in tough situations, you know, I try to get a support, really. And third point, do I have the skills? Do I have the skills to do it? I need as much ability when I care for poor as when I deal with a client, with a customer. There's even more, you know. Do we ask ourselves, do I have psychology skills or medical skills? And I come and care for this person? Or do we come saying nothing can happen to me because you know I'm in a good health and I got all the answers? And we need this humility to say, I'm not able, I'm going to achieve these skills. And the good associations will start by saying to the volunteers, let's begin by yourself, be capable, because the poor deserves your skill. So to be humble is also not to consider oneself as a man, to do only a way it's a way to realize our full potential, including with our limits. Oh, I think it's cutting again. Yes, we are too far. The distance is huge between France and Kuala Lumpur. It is all right again? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes it cuts. I don't know why. Well, you know, it's good to be able to do it like this. Okay.
It is
Okay.
some
So
kind of
I was
some
saying
form of
just,
poverty.
yes, it is a form of poverty. Thank you, Benny. It is. Yes. Yes. No, I was just saying, so to try to achieve the skills, if we don't have the skills to go and care for poor people, to try to achieve psychological skills if we need, because the poor deserves our skills also. I need to. I still have a bit of time. Yeah. Yeah. What time is it in your? Oh yes, we still have 15 minutes. Okay, 15. Okay, good, good. So yes, I need to talk a little bit about some complicated factors that we can find. We saw that God invites us to live His mercy and to love the one who may depend on us. We also saw that God invites us to love Him by taking the place of the poor, and that's amazing. Why don't we live that preferential option for the poor more easily? Or why do we do it so badly? Why is it so difficult to do it? That option that makes us worthy as human beings. I have some possessions. I know how to make them available for the one who might depend on me. Why isn't that easier? There are 4 factors that we can talk about. The first one is the cult of poverty. The cult of poverty is well spread. It consists in fighting poverty, but without meeting the person, without meeting of me. And we cannot love poverty, as I said before. We hate poverty. The cult of poverty is, we are conferring. We're conferring. I've been working on poverty for many years. I've sent packages in several countries. Yes, but do you know the poor you've sent these packages? Did you go there? Maybe you should go. Maybe you should do something else. Maybe you should go and meet the poor. If not, there's a risk to retreat into an idea, not in reality, when we don't meet people, when we don't meet the poor. The first way from loving the poor is when we love poverty in general, giving ourselves peace of mind. Second factor, choosing the poor I help. See what is unfair there. We don't deal with the poor in bulk, as a mass. We meet a poor, we meet a person. We don't take care of old, we meet an older person. This one, whose name is Jane, for example, and I go and visit her in her hospital. And also this other one next to her. And then step by step, maybe, of course, I can be interested in the quality of life, but it starts with one person. Mother Teresa, once again, she started with one person. She decided to pick up that man here. He was lying, he was homeless and lying at the corner of a street, and she put him in a bed. She didn't ask the Indian government to do something about poverty, and she didn't choose a kind of poor. She chose one poor at the beginning, and this man made her open up to all kinds of poverties. I was saying before, she was very sensitive to the loneliness of elderly people in Western countries. She was saying there's a poverty even greater in Western countries than in India. And I think she knew what she was talking about, because in Western countries, a lot of people can die alone, which is unthinkable in India. So choosing choosing my poor, second factor. It leads us to choose an association and to be happy with ourselves. From time to time, let's ask ourselves, where is the poor behind that poverty? Third factor is when we say, poor me, poor me. Basically, I'm the one who is poor. My life is compassion. I really deserve to be cared for. And by the way, I'm so poor that I can't take care of others. It is well spread also. From time to time, we can wonder, I'm caring a lot for others, but in the end, are there people to take care of me? Here we must be objective. Sometimes, of course, we have the right to feel tired. And then it is good to receive tenderness from our brothers and sisters, from our husband, or from our wife, of course. But and it is good, once again, to admit that we are limited, but to consider oneself poor, that is to say, dependent on someone else, it's quite different, and it is something else. And it is, I think, an insult to really poor people to always look for excuses in one's life, so as not to look at them with a preferential option. It can be, at least. The fourth factor is the opposite. It is when we take on too much, when we let ourselves to be overwhelmed by poverty in general and by the poor. I do a lot, I do so much, and at some point I have enough. But does the Lord ask this from me? Does the Lord ask this from us, really? Is that not pride to do too much, to do so much? I don't know if you know Saint Vincent de Paul. He was French. He was living in the 16th century. Yes, and he was dealing with poor people a lot. He was kind of I don't know if we could say that, but a prime minister of poverty in the French kingdom in the 16th century. He was well known for that. He spent all his life caring for the poor. His life is very, very beautiful to read. If you have the opportunity to read his life, it's wonderful. One day he received a word while he was praying. He was saying, Lord, there are so many poor around me. There are so many, many poor. How can I do to take care of all of them? And he received this word from the Lord, Vincent, I don't ask you to take care of the poor. I ask you to take care of the poor that I give you. The poor that I give you. Humility. The poor I give you. Those ones here, now. Not the poor in bulk. And it was an ongoing feeling for him, this feeling that he didn't do enough. And he had a meeting with the Queen of France, and she said to him, you're so amazing. You've spent your life. It's cutting again. Yes, okay. It's all right again. Yes, it's all right again. I can see at your smile, Mark, that it's all right again. So I go on. So I was talking about Saint Vincent de Paul, and he was yes, he always felt that he didn't do enough for the poor. He didn't do enough, and he understood at the end of his life. He had understood it. Well, what the Lord was asking him to do. At the end of his life, he had a meeting with the Queen of France, and he was talking with her, and she said to him, "You're so amazing. You've spent your life caring for the poor. It's so beautiful." And he said to her, he was old at this time. Actually, madam, I did nothing. You did nothing, she said, but you've spent all of your life taking care of the poor. How can you say you've done nothing? What could you have done? And he said, more. I could have done more. You see, you have the poor with you always, and I could have done more, but I did what I could. I did what I could. And for us to be able to say, on the day of our judgment, Lord, I did what I could. I could have done more, of course, but this I did it, and I did it for you, because one day I saw this poor and I saw you crucified in him. I will finish by reading you a passage of a text of the gospel. It's to finish. It's actually the remedy. You know, to see Jesus Himself in the poor is the remedy, and it is in the Gospel of Saint Matthew again. It's chapter 25, a text I think that you all know well. Chapter 25. Verse 31 to 46, and I'll read it for you. When the Son of Man comes by all the angels, and assemble before him, and he will separate people one from another, as the shepherd separates sheep from goats. He will place the sheep on his right hand and the goats on his left. Then the king will say to those on his right hand, "Come, you whom my Father has blessed, take as your heritage the kingdom. For I was hungry, you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you I was a stranger, and you made me welcome. Lacking clothes, and you clothed me. Sick, and you visited me. In prison, okay. Take as your heritage the kingdom prepared for you since the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you made me welcome. Lacking clothes, and you clothed me. Sick, and you visited me. In prison, and you came to see me. Then the upright will say to him in reply, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you drink? When did we see you a stranger and make you welcome, lacking clothes and clothe you? When did we find you sick or in prison and go to see you? And the king will answer, in truth I tell you, in so far as you did this to one of the least of these brothers of mine, you did it to me. Then he will say to those on his left hand, go away from me, with your curse upon you, to the eternal fire, prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you never gave me food. I was thirsty, and you never gave me anything to drink. I was a stranger, and you never made me welcome. Lacking clothes, and you never clothed me. Sick and in prison, and you never visited me. Then it will be their turn to ask, Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty, a stranger or lacking clothes, sick or in prison, and did not come to your help? Then he will answer, in truth I tell you, in so far as you neglected to do this to one of the least of these, you neglected to do it to me. And they will go away to eternal punishment, and the So this can be frightening. We all know that. We will be judged. This is serious. Our life is serious. This is serious, you know. It can be frightening, but for us here, we all know that to be judged is to be taken seriously also. When you're a teacher, if you evaluate him, he's the thing that you don't take his work seriously. Okay. So to be judged is to be taken seriously. This is the way it must be understood. Judged by a God of mercy, but we will still be judged. And it is right one day to be able to turn over our and to turn over our papers as men and women to whom was offered the preferential option for the poor, and to say once again, Lord, I've done what I could, but here is what I have done. In this gospel, the Lord sounds very harsh. They are the ones who gave food, who visited the prisoners, etc., and the ones who neglected to do it. And in both cases, you see, they didn't know they had done it. It is surprising. They didn't know they hadn't done it. It's surprising. Those who didn't feed, who didn't give water, who didn't visit the sick, we didn't know how we had to do it. And those who did it, oh yes, we did. And is it you that we've met? It's very surprising. Both, they didn't know. They didn't know. It was the Lord. This text occurs just after the parable of talents in the gospel. The Lord says to us, here it is, I give you 5 talents, 2 talents, 1 talent, and in the end, you'll be judged on what you've done. That was the first teaching, I think, of your course, remember? And now he goes further and he says, I've made you capable of love. I gave you the opportunity to be as merciful as I am. Be compassionate, just as your Father is compassionate. Be good, as your Father is good. I gave you the opportunity to be completely in my image and likeness. Did you do it? Lord, how could I do it? I didn't see you. But this witness of mercy that you could have towards the who was hungry, thirsty, or sick, have you simply lived it? Lord, I didn't know it was you. Or, you know, the sheep that he will place at his right hand, I did it, and it was you, and it's wonderful. You know, those who've lived this and who did it with humility. Those who don't say, I've completed a checklist also. At a given time, I had to go and visit the prisoners. I went and visited the prisoners. No, it's not that checklist. They've lived love. They have lived love. And they've lived love without seeking for a reward. And they are the first to be surprised by the reward, by the way. Actually, this text really gives us hope. We don't have to complete a checklist or to pass a test, an entrance admission to be able to enter into eternal life. We only have to live our vocation of men and women, which is a vocation to love. It's very easy in the end. We feed somebody who is hungry. We give drink to somebody who's thirsty. It is that simple. We go and visit a prisoner. And to go all the way of this text, we must read the rest. And the rest is Jesus, who walks up to Jerusalem to face his trial and his passion and then his death. He walked up to Jerusalem so as to be judged. And the following judgment is not the judgment of man. It is the judgment of God. He will be judged. He will be the one who will be judged. He will be crucified and he will lie on a cross. He couldn't go further. And yes, he made me in his image, in his likeness, a being of love, as he himself is a being of love. Do we believe it? Do we want to practice it? We are trying, and we're going to go further with him. Yes, he was, remember, at the top of the mountain, and now he's on the cross. And he wants us to love him while he's on the cross, the poorest of the poor. To finish, I will tell you a sentence of Saint John of the Cross. Yes, just to say that the preferential option for the poor is only image and likeness of the love of God for us. And Saint John of the Cross was saying, at the evening of our lives, we will be judged by our love. At the evening of our lives, we will be judged by our love. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with you. Blessed are you among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary,
Pray for us.
Yeah,
at the hour of our you know, but I don't want to do it without you. I want you, and first show me the one I could help, not the whole planet. I won't be able to save the whole, but the one you give me. Who do you give me? You see, and it can be a person in a hospital. It can be an old person. It can be also to go and give a little money to a beggar, or only to speak with him. Only to or to maybe to invite him for a dinner in a restaurant, maybe to share something with him. Maybe not only to give money, but spend a moment with him. It's not only money, but also to the time that you can spend with. But ask the Lord first, maybe. It's not a question of what do I have to do, what do I must do. It's not an obligation. Just what the Lord says to you, I would say.
Thank you.
Okay. Right. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, very well. Beatrix, was it all okay for you from as a guest? Okay, must be that. Okay.